I'm Gerald Bentley. This is Wrestling with Sales. We're on the Fired Up Network, and we are joined today by Joe Dombrowski. You see him calling the action for Major League Wrestling, MLW, and AAA Wrestling, the English language. Joe, thanks a lot for joining us. I want to talk about those and some of your other wrestling activities.
Without a doubt, thanks for having me. I appreciate the platform. I appreciate that there's interest out there from anybody in anything I'm doing. So, my pleasure to be here.
No, hey, thanks. So, how did you get started as a job that I'm sure lots of people would like to have? You may share something similar to me when I was growing up and watching Tony Schiavone and ended up getting into sportscasting, saying, man, I would love to do that. That would be the job. You actually ended up getting to do it. How did that come about?
It's difficult because there's really no quote unquote right answer for that. If I had done everything, if I'd done everything the same way, but on purpose with the intention of getting the way and where I am, it wouldn't have worked. It was
Sure.
it was such a right time, right place, right person, right circumstance type of situation. Um, I always knew I wanted to get into wrestling, but I didn't know what role. I knew I wasn't going to be a wrestler because I was never really physically gifted, athletically gifted. If I had any gifts, which would be debatable at the time of my teenage years, but I had gifts that I could cultivate verbally or mentally. So I thought, could I be a referee? Could I be a manager? Could I be a commentator, ring announcer, etc.? And when I started going to local events in 2002, that's when the bug really hit me. And I really realized, okay, this is my way in. I'm in the second row. There are wrestlers right in front of me. I can interact with them on the internet. This is very real now. It is very
Hmm.
possible now. And it only took me 6 months before I had middlemanned basically a fundraiser at my high school um, with IWC Wrestling, which was the local top wrestling outfit and really still is in the Pittsburgh area. Um, I'm 16, just turned 17 years old at this point. So my first job is pushing tickets, hanging posters, pushing the event, getting sponsors, getting the town engaged as best I could, being as young and as kind of introverted as I was. Um, and being 17 years old, there wasn't really much I could do in the way of direct involvement on the show.
Sure.
The promoter likes to have local flavor, whether it be a guest, a coach or a teacher or somebody as a guest referee or manager. But being that the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission would not allow anyone under 18 involved, I really couldn't be anywhere within, the confines of the ring. So I don't know if it was my idea or if it was the promoter, Norm Connors, but one of us suggested me being on commentary. And I threw myself into that role as best I could. And all these years later, I don't mind telling you, I was awful, dreadful at it. Because I'd never done it before. I didn't understand. I understood to a degree what it was, but I didn't understand how to execute
Sure.
what it was.
Easier to look at it than it is to actually do it and talk on
100%.
camera, be concise, actually speak
100%.
clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think every facet of what I needed to know, I probably didn't. And I had a very patient, supportive lead broadcaster named Jeff Gorman who kind of carried me through it as best he could. But that was my foot in the door. And months after that, I'm writing for .com and I'm doing guest commentary spots here and there. And then finally, 7 months after that, there was an event coming up that all of the regular announcers were unavailable. And basically, I wasn't the best man for the job. I was the only man for the job. And they stuck me back in there. And I was able to put enough passion and effort and work ethic into it that I think Norm, the promoter, saw something in there he could cultivate. And I've basically been sitting in that chair ever since. And I've been able to grow and expand from there to all the other things I've done, thankfully.
So now coming from that, because I mean, there are so many independent territories, and I think there's just a general rebirth in pro wrestling right now. You just saw last week Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins lead singer, owner of the National Wrestling Alliance that has been brought back. He's starting a territory system again. He made Exodus Pro in Cleveland the first territory. You're seeing really big independent promotions taking root across the country, and that's leading into promotions like MLW, which is a promotion that I've been following for a few years now. And really, some of the young stars that you're seeing in other promotions, in an AEW, in a WWE, they got their start on the national scene on MLW Fusion. How has the just the general growth of pro wrestling helped MLW kind of catch its footing and grow?
Well, it's been fascinating to see because it all comes down to who is willing and able to leverage and take advantages of the rapidly changing content creation landscape. And that comes with streaming, that comes with internet pay-per-view and video on demand, and so many different outlets. And media is so fragmented now
Hmm.
compared to when it was when I grew up, to where I don't know what the definition of mainstream is anymore. It feels like all of the most buzzworthy uh, television programs that come along are on places like Netflix, and
Sure.
Netflix accounts for whatever it is, 15 or 20% of the overall homes. Meanwhile, cable is in still 70% of the homes, and it's a dying breed. So things are evolving and changing really year over year, and MLW's done a great job of putting itself in a position where it can be available in as many homes as possible, not just through cable and satellite and fast channel, but also Fight Plus, also YouTube. Us using the Fight Plus model for premium live events every single month is a
Sure.
really exciting and engaging thing for me, because we have a destination to build to now. We have a live special. It's not just all taped content. It's not just all episodic content week over week over week. There's a destination. There's a peak in those
Hmm.
storytelling moments. Um, and you talked about the talent that has been through, and just the names that went through before I was in MLW, from MJF and Darby Allin and Ricochet and the Lucha Brothers and Swerve Strickland, and so many others that you can name that have passed through just recently, let alone the original birth of MLW from '02 to '04. Um, it really is a breeding ground for the next man up and the next woman up. The talent that are going to do amazing things all over the world. And MLW might be a stop for 6 months. It might be a stop for 6 years, but it's a chance for those talents to really get their sea legs under them and really start to forge an identity over who and what they are. And I always look at MLW as having kind of the best of all different worlds and all different eras, because you have a sleek, bright production that's very attractive to a television executive or to an advertiser, but you also have a grit to it and a rawness to it and a realness to it, to where it's
Hmm.
not overproduced, and the talent can be themselves and they can go off the cuff, and there's a danger and a spontaneity to it. So I feel like MLW is the kind of a product that, no matter what kind of wrestling fan you are, if you give it a chance, you're going to find something about it that you'll enjoy and appreciate. And I think being able to cross over that rapidly growing scope of who and what a wrestling fan is these days is the key to really getting as big of an audience as possible.
Well, I agree. And I think the name of the program really kind of implies that too. MLW Fusion. Talk about having a hybrid of all the different styles, a big, big presence from Lucha Underground. Welcomed, I saw Selena De La Renta back on. So one of the stars, if you will, of MLW a few years ago. And you have that lucha style. You also have a real MMA influence style. And then a wrestler I'm familiar with from here in Kansas City, Central States Wrestling, one called Manders and Mace Warner. I mean, it's old school, hard hitting, slobber knocking matches with those guys.
Without a doubt. And the whole second gear crew of one called Manders, Mance Warner, Matthew Justice, they're a trio that probably really wouldn't be palatable in a corporate world filled with billionaires and shareholders. But MLW is that perfect home for them because they're able to be seen on a grand stage, but they're able to be themselves and have that authenticity. And the matches they've had with The Calling, Ricky Shane Page, and Akira, and guys of that nature have really pushed the boundaries on violence and bloodletting. And it's really something that you see here and there in a company like AEW, but not really to the degree that Major League Wrestling is able to do. And we have that, and we have the luchadors. We've spotlighted the likes of Hijo del Vikingo and Commander and Arez and Microman, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the catch wrestling style with guys like Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Filthy Tom Lawler, who has the MMA background and the jiu-jitsu background. And Tracy Williams is another great catch wrestler. And Tony Deppen is a little bit all over the place. Kevin Blackwood's on the roster now.
Sure.
Guys who've come up and they're younger, but they really encapsulate. I think a lot of it's true with MMA as well, that when MMA first started, it was, well, here's the karate guy versus the jiu-jitsu guy, and here's the collegiate wrestler versus the sumo wrestler. But now, modern day MMA, you have to know how to do everything to be able to succeed in that world. And I think in pro wrestling, you're seeing so many young guys coming up who have trained a little bit in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and they have a little bit of kickboxing background. They maybe did wrestle as an amateur, and you have, hybrid wrestlers in and of themselves. And that's going to make it so much more exciting. What we say in MLW is styles make fights. And it really is true. And it's true when I call MMA, and it's true when I call pro wrestling, because to break down the psychology and the strategy of not just what's happening, but why and what's next, to me is so thrilling. And it's like a chess game. It's like a chess game between both men in the ring. It's a chess game unofficially with us announcers as well, because we have to try to figure out why these moves are being made and what the next move might be. So when it gets intricate and really in the weeds like that, that's when I feel really, really alive, because then I'm being challenged. If I'm being challenged and I'm engaged, that means the viewer's probably engaged too.
Oh, very true. And it is important. I think one thing that really stood out about MLW's production versus some of your other wrestling content is the sport type production of it. We're presenting it as, and there's vignettes and there's interviews and behind the scenes, but the actual match itself is presented as a contest, as a physical contest, which I think is something that really helps make it stand out.
I think perception is reality, and I think branding is important. And MLW does not have sports entertainers and performers. MLW has fighters
Mm-hmm.
and wrestlers, and we are not, trying to be Hollywood. We're not trying to be something that we're not. This is a pro wrestling product, and we're very proud to be a pro wrestling product. And there's no reason to shy away from that, because wrestling fans watching a wrestling show want to see wrestlers wrestle. It's a famous quote from Jim
Yeah.
Cornette, and there's no better way to simplify that. And I love that, because it gives credence and credibility to everything that we're doing. And I would much rather talk about two fighters' combat strategies than two entertainers' performances. It doesn't sound as enticing to me. It sounds like I'm judging a dance competition, and there's nothing
Fair.
wrong with that, but that's not why I tune in. Certain words associated with the brand give you the identity that you want. Major League Wrestling does a great job of doing that.
Well, and getting to that traditional wrestling element. I mean, you got to be involved in a really great event that happens every year in Las Vegas, the Plaza Hotel, the Cauliflower Alley Club, up there with the Mouth of the South and Medusa. How did how did that come about, and how long have you been involved in the Cauliflower Alley?
This is my first year. I'd
Okay.
always wanted to go, but it was always a situation of schedule and finances and timing, and it's like, maybe next year, maybe next year, maybe next year. Finally, I was at the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Tragos Thez Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. I was there on helping support Les Thatcher, who's a great friend and business partner of mine, who was being inducted into that Hall of Fame as receiving the very first Jack Briscoe Award. And I started talking to Greg Oliver, who is a writer and editor for Slam Wrestling in Canada. And, we hit it off. We talked and done some things together through the internet. We never actually formally met until that weekend. And again, timing, right guy, right place.
Hmm.
Medusa wanted Greg Oliver to help out with hosting, but Greg wanted to be a reporter. He didn't want a conflict of interest. He wanted to cover the event, not be the event,
Okay.
which is a great tenet in journalism that I wish more people abided by, quite honestly. But Greg's recommended me, and I started texting with Medusa, and I was available. I was. Let me think. The week coming out of that was going to be a challenge for me because I had to fly out Wednesday night, Thursday morning, get right back into Chicago. But the ceremony itself being, I believe, a Tuesday and a Wednesday, made it palatable for me,
Okay.
and to work with Medusa, to work with Jimmy. I jumped at the opportunity, a chance to sell my wares and plug my brands over there and meet some great fans and meet some great people that I've known about forever, like Sheldon Goldberg up in New England, and people of that nature. Be Brian Blair, the CAC president I'd
Yeah,
never met
president.
beforehand. Yeah, I'd worked with several events with Rey Mysterio, but I never actually had the chance to speak to him because things are so busy at these events. I got to see CM Punk, who I hadn't seen in 18 years was the last
Yeah.
time I was on an event with
Really?
Punk. Yeah.
Who gave
2000.
the keynote at it, I believe.
Well, he was the hesitate to say main event attraction because that might
Yeah.
offend some of the other inductees, but he was the final inductee of the ceremony, and he had an incredible acceptance speech as he received I believe the Iron Mike Mazurki Award. Um, and he was in a great mood. He gave everybody the time of day, and I hope whatever he's doing now, he's in a good place, and it's that same kind of CM Punk that I saw in Vegas, and not the kind that we've read about on the internet. But I had a blast. I mean, I got a chance to again help steer the ship, host the broadcast, or help host the ceremony, and interact with guys like Rey Mysterio and Punk and JPL and Ron Simmons, and it was again. I'm big on challenges. And it was a challenge for me because there were people there I didn't know. It was a circumstance I'd never done. I'd done a lot of speaking, I've done a lot of wrestling hosting, but never in a banquet type environment. So
Hmm.
can I do that? It's different than being hyperbolic at ringside. It's a little more reserved and a little more classy, if I can say that about myself. But um, first night, for the most part, good. I had to tone my voice down a little bit, but second night I thought was a lot smoother, and probably be back next year as long as all the moon and the stars align correctly. But everybody there was a blast to work with, and it was fun. CAC is a great charity. There's a
Hmm.
great steakhouse and a donut shop in the hotel.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
remodeled.
yeah, what else do you need? You get to people watch on Fremont Street. So
Yeah.
it was a fun time. Normally, I'm very business conscious and money conscious, but it was kind of cool just to spend 4 days to get away and, like, you know what? let's have fun. I earned this once this year,
Absolutely. And, easily a night with the person who made more news in wrestling than anyone. And like
And
I said, I
for the
hope
time
everything does go well because
for the
there's
time
always two
being,
sides to everything.
his final appearance in wrestling to date. So who knows?
True.
Depending on what else he does, that could be his swan song. Who knows? But yeah, 100% right. I wish the best for him, and obviously he wasn't happy where he was, but whatever's next, I hope he finds that happiness.
Now, not to undersell something, but also involved with another huge organization in professional wrestling, AAA, Lucha Libre Worldwide, doing the English broadcast for AAA. What's that like? Because, you see in every pro wrestling show now, MLW included, WWE, AEW, the presence, the influence of Lucha Libre is unmistakable, as much as the influence of Japanese strong style. It's got to be neat to be working for him.
It is a roller coaster, but it's one I love being on. It's so exhilarating because you're going to see the high flying and the breathtaking stunts. You're going to see the down and dirty blood and violence. One of the coolest things with me to watch is just how um, immersed in the culture Lucha Libre is. The masks are sacred. You could go to any gift shop and buy luchador mask memorabilia or souvenirs. It's so generational. You see grandparents take their grandkids. You see aunts and uncles, moms and dads. It truly is an experience that I don't think is the same in the U.S. It's a
Much
little
more
more,
ingrained.
yeah, it's a little more niche in the U.S. and it's a little more um, you know, catering to certain demographics. But I think Lucha Libre kind of steps out of that box. Um, Conan is great to work for. He's the godfather of Lucha Libre as far as I'm concerned. And, how many careers has he helped launch from, Rey Mysterio and Psychosis and Eddie Guerrero and,
Oh, sure.
all the way up to present day helping Hijo del Vikingo. So, um, I'm very fortunate that I have a chance to sit with Larry Dallas and do those broadcasts, those triple manias, baseball or soccer, football stadiums with 15, 17,000 people in them, sometimes more. Um, the language barrier can be challenging. I don't always understand everything from every in-ring promo. Um, the video packages may not necessarily clue me in as much as they would if they were en
Sure.
inglés. But that just speaks to the fact I've got to, you know, uh, uh, get my ass in gear and do the prep work and do the research and figure things out and be ready for anything because you're live. So if something changes or something happens impromptu, um, no matter what language you speak, you better be ready to run with it. And
Absolutely.
that's been a great lesson as far as just dealing with the elements live. Um, so AAA has been very valuable to me. I hope I've been valuable to it. I know there were certain instances in the past where they had to kind of work out some of the kinks in the armor of their English announce planning. Um, but I think we got a good thing going now. Hopefully, going to keep working on it and making it even better. Um, but yeah, I'm honored that the AAA believes in me to the point where I've been able to do whatever it's been, the 9, 10 broadcasts I have, and hopefully a lot more to come.
Oh, it's terrific because, I mean, it is, really one of the pinnacles of the pro wrestling world. And like I said, I mean, to this day, you can look at the stars in all the different promotions, but the Hilo de Benkingo is easily one of the most electrifying wrestlers I think anyone's seen. Size notwithstanding, the guy can just go.
Without a doubt. He is One of my favorite people, because he comes across so genuine. And I comment on it a lot on the AAA broadcast, especially when um, the AAA broadcasts start with the opening ceremony to honor, some of our forefathers that helped build AAA. And also with that, um, and speaking of forefathers, that'd be Antonio Pena and Joaquin Rodan. Um, Speaking of that, Maricela Pena, who is currently the president of AAA, is always sitting ringside,
Hmm.
honoring her deceased relatives and carrying on the family name and family legacy, along with Dorian, who runs a lot of the day-to-day stuff now. But to watch Vikingo come out for those ceremonies, or even just to come out for his match, just the massive smile on his face and the reverence he treats Maricela Pena Rodan, and the reverence he treats the AAA Mega title. Kid's only 26. If he stays healthy, it's scary how good he's going to be.
Sure.
But being as good as he is now, and being in the main events with Ray Fenix and Kenny Omega and guys like that, he has not lost who he is. He has not lost that humble nature. He's still just a kid living his dream. And whenever I run into him, it's he just gives us off such a friendly energy, and happy to be here, but not in a complacent way. Happy to be here in a way that you know what, I'm still in awe of what this sport is, and it deserves my all, and I'm going to give it my all. And he does every single time he goes out there.
And is so electrifying in person. Saw him in person here in Kansas City, uh, wrestling up against Kenny Omega, and people in the arena sitting around me were saying, "Oh, why are they featuring this guy? Who knows this person?" People that just watch, you know, U.S. wrestling. And about 30 seconds into the match, after I had leaned back and said, "Well, hey, I've seen him wrestle TJP in person. This guy's amazing. Just relax. He's fine." The the two guys who were carrying on, complaining, editing the wrestling show as it's going live. "Oh, I wouldn't have done this. I would have done this." Leaned over and said, "Oh, hey, where do you see more of his matches?" "Oh my God, I can't believe he did that. Wow." And that's the effect that I think just separates him, because he catches those smart mark fans, if you will, who are kind of fantasy booking the show as they're sitting there. It's great to take that person out into total suspended disbelief and just being into the show.
Vikingo truly is this generation's Rey Mysterio, the next Ray Fenix, whatever comparison you want to make.
Sure.
He can do things that I don't understand how a human can do it. And it's put him in the spotlight very early, very quickly. First time I saw Vikingo was 2019. My first Triple Mania was Triple Mania 27 in Mexico City. And even then, he was in, I believe, a trios match. He was still part of Jinetes del Aire. And even back then, you could see he jumped out. There's
Yeah.
something here. And God, how old would he have been then? Probably 22,
19, 20.
21, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even back then, you knew there was really something special there. And he's only, I think, gone above and beyond those expectations. Again, I hope he stays healthy. I know he's been banged up a little bit recently, but if he does, just thinking about where he's going to be and where that trajectory is going to go in 5 years from now,
Yeah.
insane.
Oh, absolutely. Could be one of the high rising stars. There has to be somebody. There won't be another Rey Mysterio, but somebody needs to be the next person, right? So hey,
Without a doubt.
we'll hop into the bonus round here as we're winding it down. Got the dealership rescue title for you. Get to be the champion for the week. Just a few quick questions. You had some new champions in MLW from the Slaughterhouse. Let's just ask just quick comment on a couple of them. How about the Kick Demon, Janae Kai, your new featherweight champion?
Yeah, Janai Kai came out as a complete surprise, substitution for Becca, who was unable to be there. And I had met Janai Kai probably not too far away from you in Collinsville, Illinois, St. Louis area,
Yeah, real close.
when Warrior Wrestling was down there.
Hmm.
And again, she is somebody who is very different because she emphasizes aggression and physicality and kickboxing and taekwondo. And I know she just come off of a few months being in Japan. So
Yep.
she's somebody that when you see her just walk through the curtain, kind of piques your interest. So, oh, this is different. And with Selena De La Renta with her, that makes her even more dangerous because not just again a one-person hybrid athlete, but a very influential and powerful mind behind her as well. So this puts the featherweights completely turned upside down, and with Selena pulling the strings, I think Janai Kai is going to have a very, very dominant run.
Yeah, it definitely helps sometimes to have that managerial influence outside. And then just one more champion as we're winding it down here in the Fired Up Network. How about your world heavyweight champion,
Alex
Alex
Kane,
Kane?
yeah, he is somebody that has truly embraced and made the most out of every opportunity. First time I met Alex Kane, the first MLW television taping I was at live and in person, he choked out Alex Shelley. And Alex is somebody that I've known for 20 years and I have a great deal of respect for. So if you've done that, you've done something.
Hmm.
Um, I've talked a lot in this broadcast about um, authenticity and about things happening organically and naturally. And Alex Kane's ascent was very much that. Um, the Boomaye Fight Club didn't start really in any resemblance of what it is now. I think it kind of picked up where American Top Team left off and King of Mo and things of that nature in MLW
Hmm.
once upon a time in a bygone era. But it has grown so far above and beyond what that was. And you get to the 2300 Arena in South Philly, and you hear these fans chanting "Boomaye" and "For the People," and there's just a different energy in the building. And I think what makes Kane a great champion is that the front office didn't choose Alex Kane. A billionaire didn't choose Alex Kane. The fans chose Alex Kane. The fans saw something in Alex Kane. And they're a big reason I would suggest why Alex Kane is where he is right now. And you hear that reaction that skews more and more to the positive for Alex Kane as time goes on. Um, you know, even when he occasionally does some dastardly things. But
Yeah.
it's because when he comes out, you're not just watching him, you can feel that moment too. And it creates an emotional connection there that makes the fans more involved than ever before. And Kane's another guy. I'm not sure how old he is, but he's still young. He's still developing. He's not in his prime yet, and he's a world champion. And that's impressive as hell. I mean, that is nothing but a compliment. Um,
Got a
but
long way
he,
to go.
yeah, he's made incredible progress. And as far as I'm concerned, he's the guy. He's the flag bearer moving forward for MLW until someone can knock him off his perch. And there's a few people that may have a chance to do that. I'm sure Hammerstone would love a rematch. I'm sure Jacob Fatu would love to get his title back. I know Tom Lawler wants a rematch. Matt
Sure.
Cardona's there, and we know he's the belt collector.
Hmm.
Um, but man, Alex Kane just has that groundswell now. And, in sports, when a team gets that momentum and they get into that zone, they're hard to beat, man. So Alex Kane's the guy. Prove him wrong.
Yeah, you hear the fans chanting. That is great. And that organically over where the fans really believe is as good as it gets. So, everybody watching this, speaking about fans, MLW building up toward Fightland next month. You can watch Joe Dombrowski calling the action on MLW. Joe, where's the best place people can find you, kind of follow you on the socials?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Joe_Dombrowski, or on Instagram at Joseph_Dombrowski. My website is joe-dombrowski.com. You can read about a lot of my history, past results. I don't update my schedule as much as I should. I'm sorry. Or you can buy a ton of DVDs that I have for sale from events I've worked or projects I've done. And ProWrestlingLibrary.com is my digital channel, where I have a lot of video on demand content for buy or for rent. Again, originals, documentaries, compilations, live events. And I've just struck a deal to do a content sharing agreement that's going to bring a whole new set of classic wrestling content to Pro Wrestling Library, including USWA Texas and the Sportatorium, including Herb Abrams UWF, including IWCCW, some very, very rare old territory and independent footage that is not owned by a billionaire currently, and a lot more cool stuff. So stay posted at ProWrestlingLibrary.com. We're going to throw up a few new titles every week and build that library back up. I had to switch platforms, actually, when PivotShare went out of business at the end of August. And I had 525 hours available for rent or sale that I had to basically re-upload from scratch on my new platform. I've gotten about 110, 115 hours up of that 525, and I'm going to keep going and going every week until I'm up past 525. So follow the journey. Again, there's something for every fan, and I appreciate any fan out there who votes with their dollar, because that's the best way that you can let somebody know that you're digging what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Joe, thanks a lot for joining us. And just from that, there's plenty more. We'll have to have you on again sometime when the new content is all up there, or just to talk about some wrestling history. We didn't even get to mention Ric Flair's last match.
Hell of a time. The most surreal event I've ever done, when you could see Seth Green, The Undertaker, Kid Rock, Nick Gage, Sanjay Dutt, all backstage at the same. Those names don't belong together in any form or fashion, but they were all there.
Crazy.
And yeah, loved being a part of that.
Well, for the Fired Up Network and from our friends at Montway Auto Transport bringing you this show, if you need to get a car transported to a wrestling show or a wrestling ring transported somewhere in your truck, just go to Montway Auto Transport, www.montway.com/WS, and they'll get you handled and get that vehicle to where it's supposed to go. Joe, thanks again for stepping into the ring here on Wrestling with Sales and the Fired Up Network. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody out there for listening.